Hi, this is Eternal King here, bringing you another LOR video today. So I wanted to talk about the new Eternal season, basically give you predictions going into the new Eternal rotation and just like how the new cards are going to land. There isn't really any content about this subject specifically. So like if you go to masteringruneterra.com or Runeterra AR, you're not going to see new Eternal deck lists that aren't made by amateurs, and you're not going to get predictions in terms of what's going to be good into the new season. And if you want to know what's good, you're basically going to have to wait a week into the new format to basically find those deck lists and see what people are playing. So I can give you some early predictions that will be, fairly accurate. So the first one is going to be Eddy. Eddy was huge for Standard. Um, Basically the one-off of Eddy, making a lot of decks inherently better. But in Standard, it is going to be the aggressive mid-rangey beater shell. In Eternal, where you actually have win cons, it is going to be a little more ramp or control focused. That's kind of how that format leans. So you have two options. You have Shadow Isles, which is going to give you a very comprehensive removal package, and then you just play big stuff. But more likely, it is going to be sort of the Freljord shell. Now, I'm not saying that this is the best Freljord ramp shell for Eddy currently, but it is a Freljord ramp shell for Eddy. So, again, Feel the Rush being a very staple ramp card. There are specific instances where you might want to be on a different ramp win con. You have Dragon Ramp. You also have the card that brings out, basically tutors a unit out of your deck once per turn. Those are options as well. I'm not saying that Feel the Rush is the best card, but it is a very easy card to recommend based on what it does. Again, Bird and Ice is a very staple card for the Eternal format. It shows up in Standard, but it generally performs very, very well in Eternal. Because, again, the power scale is higher, the people commit harder to their plays, there's higher synergy plays, so having that kind of board wipe is very important. Even Ruination and Shadow Isles is very important, that sort of thing. So, again, a deck like this is a kind of, there will be some version of this deck, which is going to be the one-off of Eddy, Freljord Ramp, Feel the Rush, Bird and Ice, board clear, then play your Enraged Fire Spitter, and then in my case I'm running Rond. It might not be Rond, but Rond is a decent card because of his play effect also being quite impactful. While also getting the boon as well. So like the whole idea just being like you play big stuff that has good play effects and you get the boons. You have your board wipe combo. You have your Volibear. You have your one off of Eddy, and you have your Feel the Rush as your ramp win con, and then your kind of your standard ramp shenanigans. All of that is very easy for me to predict that list will exist. It'll do at least 50%, and it will be a new quote-unquote ramp deck in Eternal. And yeah, it'll be okay. Whether it beats the Shadow Isles Freljord Feel the Rush deck, I don't think that really matters. The point is more so is that it will be competitive enough, and it is a new deck. Specifically, the three-way split between Trundle, Volibear, and Eddy. So like that's an easy prediction for me to make as a 50% win rate deck, which would put it about on par with Rise, for example. So very good, very good. That's an easy prediction for me. The other prediction is that there will be some sort of Morganna deck in Eternal. So again, there are some interesting things that Morganna does in Eternal other than just being a tempo card. So one of them is like the targeting synergy with Ezreal is one example. And basically allowing all of these sort of cards to all of these shackle curse cards to target, and then their targeting effects will hyper level both Morganna and Ezreal, and there's some synergy there as well. That is easy to recommend. I'm less confident about this one because I actually think that Morganna in particular, whether it is in the sort of aggro mid-range beater shells or Morgana just in general, I find is much poorer in Eternal, which is a good thing. You don't want Morgana to be, you know, the OP card in every single format. Reasons why she's worse in Eternal, a lot of it has to do with not caring about attacking, or I'll give you an example of one of the best decks in Eternal, and it is a meme deck, but it's actually very competitive, and it's just like spiders, right? And it's like playing spiders with it's like 3 of a Brood Awakening with Ice Veil Legacy. Is the old card, which allows you to instantly at burst speed give like all of your spiders 3/3. Iceborne Legacy, yeah, give all your spiders 2/2. So now like every single spider that ever exists is now a 3/3, and so like if one gets cursed twice, like you wouldn't really care, you'd just replace it. So there's a lot of reasons why in Eternal specifically, with the card variety and the different types of decks, that Morgana is not going to be this sort of OP force that she is otherwise. Phlox having more removal, having Swain Nora be a thing where you don't really care about any of the cards in Swain Nora. There's just a lot of reasons why Morgana is worse. So my prediction is that Morgana is not nearly as impactful and OP in the Eternal season. Eddy will be pretty impactful. Morgana not nearly as much so, because again, Standard is an aggro, mid-range, tempo beater fest. That's what that format is and always will be. Eternal isn't just that. Yes, there are dedicated aggro decks that do well. Poppy Nora, Ziggs Poppy is an example of an aggro beater shell kind of tempo deck. Azir Aurelia is more of a rally deck, but again, obviously quite fast. But for the most part, there's a lot of decks that exist that just don't care about Nora. There's Hecarim decks, like if Hecarim gets hit with the gets hit, then with the shackles, that would really suck. But you could play around that by just throwing ephemerals at their face over and over and over again and not giving them any good shackle targets. Having to shackle an ephemeral unit is going to feel so dumb and so useless on your part, and you'll have to do it just to stay alive. So again, there are many examples of decks. There are certain decks that she'll do very well into. Thralls is an example that commits very hard to big units, and then Shackles will have a relatively high value point into something like Thralls. But Thralls isn't the meta deck, and it never will be because it is so high synergy and high commitment, even for Eternal standards. But I like to play it now and then. Galio. Galio's not going to be as impactful as he is in Standard, and the Formidable package isn't nearly as impactful in Eternal as it is in Standard. But yeah, the one-off of Eddy is going to be everywhere. If Eddy functions the same way as he does in Standard, you're going to see a lot of one-off Eddies in a lot of different style of decks. And then less Morgana. Mordakaizer is kind of hard for me to predict because I don't really know what he will do. I think he'll actually do worse than he does in Standard. Because in Standard, having a board of just like non-stop beater value is actually like a thing. It is a thing that works in Standard. Having a board of non-stop beater value in Eternal is like whatever. We have like Atrocity. We have, alt win cons. We have, Decimate and Burn win cons. We just have a lot of stuff in Eternal that is not board-centric. We have Burden Ice, as a 3 of, and then that being kind of pretty important. Ruinations, again, being, viable. There's just a lot of stuff. Rise, Rise doesn't care about your board, like, at all, ever. Rise into Mordakaizer is, like, the most one-sided matchup I could imagine. Is just, like, Rise just gets to literally play Solitaire while Mordakaizer plays Solitaire, but Rise's Solitaire actually does something. Morgana and Mordakaizer stocks will be down in Eternal, and then Eddy's will be up in terms of his ramp usage anyway. Kind of the actual Eddy deck, all-in Eddy decks and things like that. People will really try to go for that in Eternal, and it'll make more sense. and it'll work because you can tutor out multiple Eddies and things like that. So yeah, that's my predictions for the Eternal season. It'll be a fun one. Again, Eternal is already very well balanced right now. I don't have many complaints for Eternal. You know, you have your rally deck, you have your aggro deck. Ramp has seen multiple upgrades and has only gotten better over time. So once, you know, the lists don't exist yet, but once they're up there, once they get some ladder numbers in on, you know, Eddy ramp basically in Eternal, that'll be there. Again, you have things like, you know, all-in rumble, discard aggro doing very well, or discard mid-range. You have elusive spam, you know, kind of being better even than it is in standard, and it's already good in standard. You just have good, you know, you've just got good decks all around, a lot of variety in Eternal, and to the point that it's almost hard to know what exactly you should be playing, because you can play anything. You know, you want to play Vlad, go for it. So my prediction is that this will be a very varied, this will be a very diverse, even more so than we see right now, an exceptionally diverse season of Eternal. Very solid win rate metrics across the board for a variety of decks. Aggro will always be a little higher than everything else, but otherwise it's going to be a good one. And for those of you who have been frustrated with, you know, three-way split Eddy Morganna dominating, you know, or three-way split Eddy just kind of dominating every single deck, you're not going to see that. You'll see all-in Eddy and Eternal, but otherwise, you know, aggro will still be aggro, rally will still be rally, combo will still be combo. All of those decks will still exist and serve their purpose, and Eddy is just going to exist in his more high synergy decks. Alright, this is Eternal King, signing out.